Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Angela Shuttlesworth of www.Be.Lead.Grow.com, where I'm here to help leaders and organizations to increase their profit, performance, and power. And the way we do that is to remove those barriers and thrive. And one of those biggest barriers is around our inability to just be human and to acknowledge that we have emotions and feelings and we grieve, and or the problem is that we don't grieve. And so tonight we're going to be talking about what grief is and how it is impacting your life, your leadership, and I'm here to tell you it's definitely impacting your workplace. And I'm sure, thanks you for everybody who's joining on. I am sharing our video and I invite you to do the same. And what we're going to be talking about is some very practical strategies. And if you do anything else, you all hear me all the time. I say celebrate and grieve everything. Celebrate and grieve everything. That's one of my number one strategies for us to feel a full life. And one of my very dear members of the Be.Lead.Grow community was like, I need you to break it down. What do you mean when you're telling me to grieve? What does that look like? And we had a very good discussion. And oftentimes we judge and we say, okay, one area of my life is worthy of grief and the other things aren't. So obviously with death and natural disaster, we'll say, okay, it's worthy of attention. And I had a conversation on my page yesterday after watching the Iyanla Vanzant show, Fix My Life, where she was talking about the shooting that happened at Pulse in Orlando. And I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio, and around the same time, there was a shooting at a club called Cameo. And we were talking in the show, she showed the impact of the trauma from not necessarily just those who were killed at the instance, but those who were in the place. And there was this grief around their ability to still live. And I was like, well, I love that there's resources and things going into Orlando. And it's like, well, where is that same type of conversation and or the amount of resources that are available for those who are in Cincinnati? You don't see it. And so oftentimes, and so I asked and posed a question, like, are we guilty of being judgmental of what gets our attention? And a good friend posed back and she was like, well, one is, related to terror, because we were talking about the LGBTQ community. And one was just an incident. And when we use that word just, or we'll say like, oh, it's just this, or see, good. Thank you. Cousin Steve is on here and say he felt the same way. Watching that, I was like, our communities deserve that same type of attention. And because we know that it's not there, there are less resources that are being provided by the city and by government, or they're not easily accessible. Then what are we doing? And so we have to find non-traditional ways to have these kind of conversations, which is why I provide this, of course, online, and also work with organizations to come in and provide training on what does it look like. And so I wanted to start out with just giving us a few examples of how we really don't use those words exactly like it's just this or it's just that. But when you think about every time at work where you have given your heart and your energy to a project and it ends prematurely, or you've ended a friendship, and or you're in, as we say, breakdown, where there's a lack of communication, you all aren't necessarily getting along, those things are obviously going to impact who you are. I say even down to you cutting your toe and you cannot wear the heels or the hard bottom Stacey Adams that you want to wear, and it's not allowing you to show up as you desire to, right? And so my thing is, anything that takes you away from your joy and stops your heart from smiling, it's worthy of your attention. So in addition to number one strategy was to celebrate and grieve everything, number two is that we need to remove this judgment around what's worthy of our ability to grieve and what's not worthy, right? And then not only just grief, but just any emotion, right? We sit up here and say like, oh, that's not worthy of that. Why are you spending so much time on that? A common phrase, a girlfriend of mine posted a video which I shared around the death of her mother, and it had been 19 years, I believe, amount of time, and people would tell her, why don't you just get over it? And in our mind, it's like, how dare you tell somebody that they should get over something? But that comes from somebody taught you that you should suppress your emotions. And so here you are today pushing that on somebody else. And so a lot of times, our thoughts and the things are not our own. We have to remember that our mindset comes from someplace, right? Somebody's planted some seed, some word, whether it comes from family, friends, and or TV or different things that we've seen that have influenced why we believe what we believe. So it's important for us to have these techniques to replace these thoughts and to replace them with positive things that can keep us encouraged, and which is why we're here. So number one was to celebrate and grieve everything. Number two is to remove judgment and to allow yourself to feel whatever emotion it is that you have. And one of the things that I love, Brene Brown talks about, when you suppress any emotion, it teaches you how to suppress all emotions. So you think, oh, I'm not going to be sad, or I don't want to show up as I'm angry. But it is another degree of realizing that when you're suppressing anger or sadness, you're also suppressing joy. And we forget that because your mind is literally telling itself, okay, it's okay for me not to show this emotion. It's okay for me not to honor this experience. And I'm here to tell you that all of it is worthy of your attention. And so what we want to do is remember that every emotion, not just joy, not just sadness, not just anger, all of those things are worthy of our attention. And so, again, who told you that it was not okay for you to do that? And so before we get too far, because we're not going to be on here long, I wanted to share one of my favorite images around grief and what it is. And I love this little cartoon. And if you are on my friends list and somebody in your world has passed, you will have received this from me. I send it to everybody. But it's a very simple comic around French fries. And he walks up, and as you all see, there are 5 stages of grief. And he's walking up, and somebody says, sorry, there's no more French fries. And the first question, he said, what? And so he goes into denial. That's not possible. I just saw a guy walking out of this shop with a bag full of French fries. How many of us know that's one of the first things we do when we hear someone is passed? Like, wait a minute, I just talked to them the other day. As if that is going to stop it. But that is normal. It is an actual stage of grief. Anger. You better hand me them French fries or I'm going to kick your behind to the moon. And that is exactly how we feel. Like, dang it, how did they let this happen? How did that car crash? How did they not cure cancer? How did they not get the funding for this budget? Don't they understand who we are serving? Don't they understand the safety regulations? We get pissed off. And that, again, is a normal emotion. Bargaining. So then he goes into a space where he says, come on, I'm sure you have 1 or 2 left. Let's just say I take what's left and I leave. Okay, like, don't tell nobody. And I think about that when, in my mind, a very dear friend of mine passed away, and I was like, well, maybe he witnessed a crime and he in the FBI. Like, I had this crazy thought about all these different thoughts about what really happened because I just couldn't accept the idea of him leaving. And so we come up with all of these things like, well, let me just call and listen to their telephone and listen to their rings. Let me just go back and look at the pictures. All of those things are normal. And then we go into depression. And it's, I'll never taste the sweet flavor of French fries again. Boo-hoo-hoo. And that's okay. And we shed our tears, but everybody thinks that just once you've left out of depression and gotten to the place of acceptance, where he says, okay, can I have a hamburger then? And we think that, okay, that just means that we don't love or have an appreciation for French fries. And that is definitely not the case. I always say I love French fries. I want them every day of the week. I wish I could. But we want to think about those stages of grief. And then number 3 strategy is to give your worries the time and attention that they deserve. And you get to decide that. There is no formula. Some people like to say, oh, it's half the time that you spent doing it. Whatever. You give yourself what you need, right? And that comes in different ways as far as finding out what that is. So for me, I'm going to give you an example. The other day, I'm in a coaching program with an amazing coach, and Rashida, and she asked one of our questions as I was doing some business clarity work. And it was, what sorts of problems or challenges in in your own life have you overcome or solved? The best coaches, always coach from their zone of genius. And for me, I use this as an opportunity to literally write every instance where I felt that somebody either had taken advantage of me, or I was pained, or things just didn't go the way I wanted them to go. And it was so cute because she had this little small area, and as y'all see, I wrote all on the side, all up and down in the back of the paper, and I'm sure I wrote some more on other pages as well. But what I did was I went through, and every single thing I acknowledged where I am on that stage of grief. I needed to allow myself to really acknowledge what are the things that I've gotten to a place of acceptance, and what are those things where I haven't. And if I haven't gotten to a space of acceptance, what do I need to give myself so that I can get there? And that's okay. And so you want to provide yourself with that environment and or the things that you need. And the reason I want to acknowledge also is that grief is not a one-time thing. We have to till our garden. Just as you go back in gardening and you go back and you remove the weeds and you want to find out, what is going on? Why are my plants not growing? It's because those weeds have come back. Yes, you've done the work previously, but they're coming back again. So when you think about productivity in the workplace and you're like, oh, we already talked about that. There's something that's fostering that you may need to talk about, right? Where there's miscommunication, or if there's a breakdown, what is it that has happened where productivity is not what it used to be? You want to think about those things. And then you think about like starting a new project or onboarding new staff and how you transition between them. You always have to consider, how are your staff allowed to grieve the team members that have left? And then how do they deal with the anxiety of the new people that are coming on board? It's like, I don't know them. Are they tried and true? Do they have the skills and ability? So all of those things, like, it's a part of grief. And you don't use the right language for it because normally that's not acceptable in the workplace. But because of Be.Lead.Grow and because of you being a high power leader, we are giving ourselves permission to use different language that's normally not used so that we can get the experiences that we desire and deserve correct. Alrighty. So we want to give ourselves the ability to, honor these new people, honor these new experiences, and celebrate. Because, celebrate and grieve everything. It helps when you couple it with that celebration of what they bring, their creativity, their genius, all of those newness of that. And I see a couple of people jumping on. Please be sure to let me know who's on here with me. I can see the numbers going up, but I can't see who's here. And so we're about to close out, but we have a few more. And the last, number 6 is not the last one, excuse me. Number 5 is to give yourself what you need. And I am a firm believer of having things in my space. And so one of the most beautiful things I've shared with you before on a couple of other videos, hey, Ebony, thanks for joining in, is what my mom actually sent to me when I was living in Thailand. And I'm trying not to show the glare, but it says, don't forget to be awesome every day. And so I used to keep it on next to the bed. It was the first thing I saw. And now I keep it on my desk. And because I need that. I need somebody to remind me, don't play small. Don't feel like you shouldn't use your voice. I need to make sure that I'm aware that not only am I supposed to show up, but I'm supposed to show out. And that's my goal with leaders. I want you to show up and show out in every area of your life. And so if I have this constant reminder of, don't forget to be awesome, when those days when I fail and I get it wrong, because it happens, I am reminded, what? Let's get back on track. Let's get back to being awesome. And so what affirmations do you need? Sometimes it's just a matter of colors. So y'all know I love the color yellow. I talk about it often. Greens, whatever it is that gives you life. Some people love to have plants in their space. And you think about like, okay, does the office or the organization allow for that? And so I always pose this question. I love on the show The Prophet, where he asks business owners, how much space do you have and how much money have you made? And you look at productivity like, okay, how much money are we making per square inch, right? So I'm taking you a little bit into business. And when you ask that question, you want to make as much money with the smallest amount of space. But one of the things that we don't consider is always around, like, where's the workspace? But what I wish we had were actually peace zones. So where's the place where I can go and just have some peace? Particularly a lot of businesses and organizations now use cubicles, and so it can be loud, or people always feel like they can just come and ask questions, which is great, but sometimes you just need a place that just really, where you can just breathe. And when you think about that, it's like, okay, do I have a peace zone? And I would love if businesses even had joy zones. So where's the room in your building at work where you go in and it just makes you feel better? And then it makes you, to remind you of why you're there, and you leave that space inspired and ready to go and to be more productive. And so if we have designated places for people to smoke cigarettes, surely we can have designated places for people to be joyful and empowered to do their work and to show up differently in the workplace. So those are some of my dream wish lists, and you can think about what are some places that in your workplace that you have jurisdiction over that you can create that space as well. And then what else do I want to remind you all? Just breathe. That's one of my favorite strategies. If you are, my clients will all tell you that we start every coaching call, whether it's individual or group or whatever, with our 5-5-5 technique of taking those deep breaths and making sure that we are fully present. Sometimes after those deep breaths, I remember one client was like, "Ooh, I almost fell asleep," because we're always in the hustle and bustle and just going so much that we don't just stop to just breathe. And then another time, somebody, after in that space of silence and just breathing, they ended up in tears, because it's like, whoa, I'm allowing myself to feel what's going on in this moment. I'm allowing myself to be present. And so that exercise, just to tell you, is where you take, in 5 instances, you'll breathe in deep for 5 seconds, and then you'll inhale for 5 seconds, and then you'll exhale for 5 seconds. And you do that 5 times. And the expectation is that if you do that 5 times a day, it is believed that it's impossible for you to have any kind of heart failure or heart issues. I am not that kind of doctor. I am a doctor. So, hey, Reggie, thanks for joining in. Every time I see y'all make me smile. So it definitely is a reminder of how we can stay heart healthy in a different way. And it's so simple. All of us can do it. Like, if you just think about it, how many times today did you just stop and just say, and just be in gratitude? And we kind of look at people like, wait a minute, you could have been doing something at that time. It's like, no, just sit and really be present. And so I always tell people, before we do it on our calls, I'm always wiggling my fingers. I say, wiggle your toes and stretch it out. And, just really in allowing ourselves to be present is, again, a way of acknowledging the voice that's within us and allowing ourselves to feel not enough. I agree. And I'm the one who, I can tell you, I do a much better job and I feel better when I have breathed. Taking the time to breathe. And so one of the ways to remind ourselves, even as it relates to those affirmations, our phones in the world of technology are amazing. Just put reminders in those calendar reminders. What are the words that you need to hear consistently? And a reminder for you to, get up and go for a walk, go get some water. Just give yourself time to reflect and say, how do I feel in this moment? And if you put in Google, generally, I should have pulled it up. I can still. Technology. I guess keep talking to you while I pull it up. But there is a emotional heat map. And this is another thing that I show with my clients. And we talk about it in the Discover Your Power Masterclass, where it shows you the impact of, your emotions and what it's doing to your body. So if you look at this, you can see it may look very beautiful, like, oh, I'm overwhelmed with happiness. But in the same token, depression impacts our same body, our entire body in the same way. So we want to, when we're thinking about envious and being shameful or even pride, all of those things impact our body in ways that we not only could imagine, but we disregard it, and we don't allow ourselves to get back to that place of that healthy balance of that temperature, the temperatures that we want and that we need. And so give yourself what you need. And then lastly, I wanted to talk about honoring confidentiality in sacred spaces. And, generally, what we believe is a reflection of our actions. So if I'm up here saying, ooh, don't go telling nobody when you're not feeling good because all they're going to do is talk about you, generally that's because you're the person who's doing the talking about somebody else. But if you believe that people honor safe spaces and they understand and respect confidentiality, it's because you know how to honor those things. And it is a space that that we have a saying in our family about, ooh, such and such can't hold water. And we get it. Sometimes there's degrees to which we're willing to share. And I will say, I always use the opportunity whenever we're talking about confidentiality, of course, as it relates to suicide awareness. And if somebody's in need, I don't care about confidentiality. You do what you have to do to be present and to get them what they need. Because I am the person, I've been in another state and somebody sent me a text message. I'm calling 911. This is where they are. Go and get them. I don't care about how they feel afterwards. I'm not worried about shame. We can talk about this after you've lived and we've gotten you the support that you need. And a lot of times, suicide is a result of us not having that safe space to grieve and to honor our emotions and to honor our voice. And I am on a mission to make sure that we have these spaces and that we are reminded of our ability to show up for each other and to engage in a deeper level. And my thought is that the more that you engage with yourself, because leadership begins with self, the better you're able to engage with others. And then thus it's going to impact your leadership. So if you're constantly that leader that is telling your staff members or your team members, or you're building your team and you want to consider how you want them to communicate with you. Oh, I don't need to hear that. Oh, I don't need to do this. And you're constantly, which I agree, there's certain things that work in certain tribes or certain environments, and you want to think about that. But when possible, how do we keep that communication flowing in those non-traditional ways where people don't feel like they have to be robots and they can show up and show out and be their brilliant, genius, creative selves? So that's the grow in Be.Lead.Grow, and we're talking about creativity and innovation, because my belief is anything that ain't growing is dead. I love that saying. So one of the things that I wanted to offer for you all today is for you to just join our tribe. I provide weekly newsletters, and they always get the first round of discounts on different services and things that I'm offering. And you can do that by going to www.BeLeadGrow.com. And what you can also do, which is still available, is if you go to BeLeadGrow.com/discover my power, because one of those things around grief is when people do not feel the ability to use their voice, right? Hey, Maria, thanks for joining in. We're wrapping up, but still in the good conversation. So if you have anything around grief and when you felt that you've been allowed to grieve or not allowed, is oftentimes tied to when we feel we can use our voice. So you think about the experiences. Remember, I showed y'all my long list of all the things that I had been through and had to overcome that required me to give it some grief attention. It still also goes down to when my voice was either silenced or my voice was, somebody told me to, numb your pain, just don't feel it, or it was ignored. So that's the reason why we oftentimes grieve in silence and also aren't as productive or aren't as creative, because we've just got to the point where we've lost sight of our voice. So I have a strategy for you, and that is for you to go to BeLeadGrow.com, as I said, /discover my power. And the way you do that is by rediscovering your voice. And in this masterclass, you will get the tools and resources. You'll get an action guide. You get a training, a 90-minute training, where we go through and talk about your voice. And first of all, what power is and how to redefine it. And we talk about your voice and the journey of your voice. And I give you the tools and strategies that you need to see your voice in a different way. Just as you need to use your voice to honor when you need grief, you also need to understand your voice to the degree of when you need to celebrate and when you need to be powerful, which I say is all the time, because for us, power equals voice and choice. And I'm giving you one of the answers in the masterclass, but it is definitely a tool and a resource that will help you as you are desiring to craft the life, leadership, and legacy that you desire and deserve. So I'm here to make sure that you have a clear path to do these things. So in addition to looking at your the journey of your voice, we talk about how to give you the tools and strategies that you need. So remember, we talked about framing your thoughts, and when you have negative self-thoughts or different things, like remember that get over it, or this isn't worthy of your attention, all of those things, you have the ability to tell yourself that all of my emotions are worthy of my attention. You know, you can come up with these things and you replace those thoughts, or you can be intentional and say those from the beginning. And so I give you which is called the catch and release technique, that is on there as well. And then a lot of times when we deny ourselves our emotions and or we're suffering in silence, it's because we really don't even know the path that we want for ourselves. We're living this life that other people have told us to live. We are doing the things that we're supposed to do or we should do, opposed to the things that we want to do. And of course, in addition to, I want you to want to grieve. I want you to want to honor your emotions. I want you to also know how to use your voice. And so we spend some time really giving you the space to remind yourself of what's important to you. And when you do that and you have that in mind, it helps you to be more willing to say, this is worthy of my attention. So again, you can get that from Be.Lead.Grow.com/discover my power. And it is also in the subject line. And as always, if you have any questions, or just as I did this training at a request of a very dear Be.Lead.Grow member, you can go ahead and ask your questions. And if it is in my zone of genius, then I will definitely come on and provide you all with the support and resources that you all need. Yes, my sister trained her children to say supposed to and should are not allowed in their vocabulary. And I think that was a beautiful thing. And I didn't realize how much I used it. And when I got to that space, like, oh, okay, if I take that out, then I really get to discover what my voice is or what I really want to be doing. And most of the time, we don't think about that. So that is true. I like the emoji. She has the emojis like this. If you look on the replay, you won't see it. So thank you all for joining me live. Thank you all who are looking at this through the replay or through YouTube or getting this in the email. And I look forward to connecting with you and engaging with you. And as always, if you or your leadership team are looking for creative strategies to help you to better engage with your team members and to be more productive and to increase your profit, I'm here to tell you it definitely begins with this type of work and these kind of conversations. So feel free to contact me. And I am going to close out, as I always do, with this reminder that you deserve you at your best. And yes, you show up for other people, but I am here to remind you to show up for you and do whatever work is necessary for you to be your best self. Take care, and I will talk to you all soon.